Good morning, everybody. We'll start a few minutes early, so wait for people to join up, and then we'll go ahead and kick this off. Go ahead and retweet the room. Invite our guest up here. Jassy, welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
We'll get started here in just a few minutes. Let me retweet the room, and then we'll go ahead and kick it off. Good morning, Samus. Good morning, Joseph. Thanks for joining us today. Right. All right, let's do our Wax Wednesday space. Let's kick this off. Morning, Monk. How the heck are you? Let me retweet this. All right. All right, well, people are going to start trailing in. I think we can go ahead and start our conversation, Jassy. So let me just kick off this show here. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Wax family. I want to thank you all for joining us in this Wax Wednesday Twitter space this week. I'm Tommy from Wax, and today I am honored to have my boss, Jassy Jackson, the VP of Operations since the inception of Wax back in 2017. She's here to talk about wellness and mental health. For those of you who are not familiar with Jassy, she effortlessly combines corporate expertise with psychology. As the VP of the operations at Wax, she's known for building high-performing and efficient teams. This is a testimony to her 2 decades in corporate offices and a master's degree in psychology. Her impact is notably evident during her tenure here at Wax and at Intuit, where she was a catalyst for innovation, organizational psychology, and building high-performance teams. Outside of Wax, Jassy represents wellness and balance in her community by guiding people on a journey of self-realization, seamlessly integrating ancient traditions with classical psychology. And so, Jassy,
thank you so much, Tommy, for that awesome introduction.
Oh, absolutely. I'm really excited to have you here. It's always fun to be able to feature some of the folks who are maybe behind the scenes on our team, who don't always get the FaceTime maybe some of the other more vocal folks get. So I'm happy to have you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm really excited for this topic. It's something that I'm really passionate about. And yeah, let's get into it.
All right, so today we'll embark on a journey. We'll be discussing the vital intersection of wellness and mental health, and how it kind of applies in our dynamic blockchain space. Now, just as a fair warning, some of the topics that we're going to cover today are going to be considered pretty heavy. So listener's discretion is advised as we get into them. So please consider this a trigger warning if you're sensitive to some subjects such as self-harm. So hanging out with us today. We're going to dive into some initiatives, practices, and collaborations that foster a supportive environment. And that's whether you're a community member, a curious observer, or if you're really passionate about mental health. We're really valued to have you here with us today. So we'll bring it all together with technology, well-being, and community support for our space. So if you have questions, something resonates with you and you want to share, let's co-create a space today that embraces the importance of taking care of yourself and having a positive mental state. If you have questions, raise your hands. Then we'll build a community that's not just for blockchain, but also looks out for each other, which is something that I can say is definitely one of the benefits from Wax here. So let's go ahead, and I've got some questions prepared. Let me dive into those. You ready, Jasmine?
I'm ready.
All right. Okay, so first off, what was kind of the impetus to come to our space today and discuss mental wellness, mental or wellness and mental health? Excuse me.
Yeah. So I think that this is a very timely space. Originally, we were going to do this in
Right.
mid-December because, winter comes in and, we're all affected, especially in the northern hemisphere. We're all in winter right now. And some things happen to us during winter. So some of us become really sad. We tend to go down into a spiral. We're celebrating holidays, but sometimes that's incongruent. And so we were going to do this, and I think you got sick, and so we decided to move it now, and it's really timely for me personally. The intent of coming on here was to share some ideas and have a discussion around mental health based on my own education and experiences. Like you said before, I do have a master's in psychology. I've spent most of my life observing and finding insights into the human condition. And in my 20s and 30s, I was so curious about the human condition. I actually volunteered at a prevention helpline for several years. I was formally trained, and I took that to heart and eventually became a trainer, and I eventually became the president of that helpline. My experience is so deep, from helping hundreds of people off the ledge to my own ideations and my own mental health struggles. So I said earlier, this is actually very timely for me because last Friday my cousin actually unalived himself, and that has hit the family really hard. And I think it really makes you stop and think about the human condition. We don't ever know what someone else is going through, ever, because they can be smiling to your face and yet they might be battling demons within themselves. And in our community in particular, I've always been so proud of how supportive we are of each other. And other times it's just so overwhelming how quickly some of the negativity that goes on in this space or even in social media in general can affect the people within it. So here we are, ready to discuss some coping mechanisms.
And first off, my condolences to you and your family. That's terrible news for anyone to get at any time. Uh, so my condolences there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Um, yeah, you mentioned kind of negativity and in social media, and that's something that I've always been kind of sensitive to. And that I'm not too big on social media when I'm at home. Um, when you're thinking about those kind of things, is there a way that you like to try and prioritize your mental health, or is there anything that you like to remove, maybe that help that impedes the way you connecting with your spirit and though you're well, make you. I'm having trouble. I'm getting tongue tied trying to
That's okay.
speak this out. I think you know what I mean.
It's one of those days because I'm
Yeah.
having trouble too. But yeah, I think if you're like me, you tend to push through. Most of us have been taught to ignore our what we feel, to ignore the discomfort in our bodies, and so we push through, and we go for what's easy. And a lot of the times that is social media, right? And if you're like me, I personally tend to put on a smile and not really express what is happening within my being. Okay, like I need to get these things done. I need to be able to like get my work done and take care of my family and do X, Y, and Z. And I usually come last. And I can sometimes go into a downward spiral. And while it's very easy to go on social media and play the keyboard warrior, or, it's very easy to get sucked into television or whatever the case may be, those things actually make me personally go down the spiral even deeper. And that can absolutely take me deeper into anger, depression, sadness, grief. And so if I'm not careful and taking care of myself, um, you know, it can get out of hand. And I can take what is being said on social media or even to my face really personally. So I've experimented over the years with different modalities. I had to like break myself free of my own kind of loop. And I of course started with therapy, but therapy can only take you so far. Like I love therapy. I'm a huge advocate for therapy, but that can be a very restrictive. And also, if you don't have the right therapist, if you don't mesh with the right person, it just can feel very kind of hopeless. So I started to experiment with a couple different things. Um, you know, like Reiki. I love drumming. Drumming really takes me back to this primitive kind of way of being. I love hiking. I see a lot of people like online hiking and taking pictures of their hikes. I love that. Activities that help me connect with people and or help me heal from within by being in touch with like Mother Earth and my inner being, because I think we're so used to living on from the outside in and taking care of everybody else and being paying attention to what everybody else is doing, um that there are times where I'm so far into the spiral that I forget about my own tools, and I have to start asking myself some questions. Why am I feeling this way? And more importantly, how can I pull myself out of this? Because nothing ever stays the same. Just like the seasons between the bull runs and the bear markets, we've all been there, right? We're all there. Nothing stays the same, it's ever changing. And the same goes for our beings and our wellness. So it's important to develop the skills and um, to be mindful. I also try to do things that bring me joy every day. Like I mentioned before, spending time in nature, walking around my neighborhood, talking to people, connecting with positive community that uplifts and brings hope.
Is really well said. I think what really kind of sticks out is what you mentioned about change. I think someone said there was a famous quote: "The only constant is change." Or the only thing that doesn't change is that everything changes all the time. So it's definitely being on your toes and kind of trying to be uh, quick on your feet to just be ready for when something changes and to move over to whatever's next. I know that there's some reports that people are having trouble hearing the space. I've checked on our side. It looks like it might be a Twitter issue. We are recording, so hopefully they'll get this sorted shortly. If you can listen in from your PC, I believe that some folks are able to have success listening there. So that might be the best option if it's available to you. If not, we are still recording this space, so you can listen in later or share questions as well after the fact. So sorry about that. Speaking of technology and mental health, this is making my mental health kind of dip a little bit right now. Twitter once again rugging me. So like at this top of the show, you mentioned social media specifically, but how do we look at technology as a way that kind of positively impact our mental health? For me, I've always looked at it kind of like as a negative, or it drains me. But it can definitely be used positively. So what are some maybe some practices or tools that you recommend to making that a positive impact?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think it's important to acknowledge that the impact can vary from person to person, and moderation is definitely key. I think that social media has some positive influences in mental health. For me personally, particularly on Instagram and Facebook, I have worked so hard to curate what is in my feed. Like, I absolutely block and remove any negative news. Like, I don't watch the news at all, because it just feeds to that negativity. If there is an ideology or something that I'm not, that really gives me anxiety, I make sure to to take action to be able to just curate and follow the influencers that are really positive. Like, I follow people like holistic psychologist. She has written some incredible books and has like new language behind some of the things that are happening in our modern world. Um, Dr. Ramani is another really great one. She talks a lot about boundaries and, what it looks like to be in relationship, whether friendship, relationships with parents and things like that when it comes to narcissism. I think that from a social media perspective, on a positive side, it can provide connection and support with others. We have similar interests, experiences, or challenges. I love hearing people in their story times. Like, it's a great place to kind of come and tell your story and build community, and understanding. I think that social media is a great way to also gain information and awareness, but I have to say with discernment, right? Discernment is key. Doing our research, seeing into the credentials of the people that are posting, it allows for that easy information. It's especially to mental health issues. There's so many therapists out there that I see on social media now. I think that the American Psychology Association and other associations across the globe are kind of easing up on some of their rules around, sharing some of our practices and information on the internet and on social media. And then spaces like this, right, are so important because I think we all shy away from these topics, and it can contribute to our education and empowerment. Um, yeah.
Yeah, this is spaces like these definitely are a big for me when we do anything with like, so I'm not too I don't maybe take the best care of my mental health or my wellness. When like Steve says something earlier, when something's going on, I tend to just grit my teeth, put my head down, and just get through it. Just drive through it as best I can, knowing things eventually, like you said, things change. Some things lessen as time goes on. So yeah, I think these spaces and being able to use social media, like you mentioned, just to keep in touch and kind of it almost like it lets us grow our safety net, or not our safety net, but like a support net for when we need something or people might be looking out for us and stuff like this. So I appreciate that. Definitely positive impacts there. Now my next question is kind of a little bit apt, like you mentioned, dealing like directly with loss and grief. I think uh, you know sometimes you might be fine, and then you have something is triggered by a loss, whether like it's a relationship that ends, someone passes away, or even losing a pet. What has been your experience when it comes to dealing with loss? What tools do you use? What do you have in your arsenal?
Yeah, so this is a great layer of mental health to bring up because we all experience loss at one point or another, whether it's through death or ending relationships, friendships, and it can have some really huge triggering effects in our lives. For me, every loss that I've had in my life has hit different. And
Right.
so for example, my first loss was in my teens and I was so angry I couldn't wrap my head around it. I stayed angry for like a decade, and here was the key to my healing. It was talking about it. Telling that story over and over again helped me to heal and to come back to myself because I was out of my body. I had what they called in my spiritual path they call it soul loss, and what that translates to is basically losing a piece of ourselves, losing sight of who we really are. And so, with every death being or every ending being different, last year I lost tons of friends, because we outgrew each other. Um, in 2022, I lost my cat, which was devastating, but it was overshadowed by the loss of my grandmother within those 30 days. And while I felt like I grieved a lot, year two hit me like a ton of bricks. So, understanding the cycle of griefs, understanding that it's an ever changing kind of thing that we go through. And not only did I need space held for me, but I also was put in a position to have to hold space for others, and that can be a bit overwhelming. So if you're put into a position where you're having to comfort others while you feel like crap and you feel like you need your own space held, that can be overwhelming as well. So what I would have to say to anyone dealing with grief is to stand still for a few days, for a few weeks, or a few months. Take it easy, become your own professional self care expert. Experiment with different modalities, such as, like I said before, talk therapy. You can even dive into your own creative outlets, try a new sport, do new things that will test what brings you joy and will help you process these things, right? Because a lot of the times we just go into autopilot. So the most important thing to do is to start to listen to our bodies and to get out of our head. There's a part of our brain that is there to keep us safe, and it's there to talk fear into us and to stay in our comfort zone. So realizing that and being mindful about that, and then going out and doing things to purposely pull ourselves out of that.
One thing you mentioned there, like, really resonated with me. Like, you mentioned autopilot, and when, like, for myself, when my mom passed away, that's, I think, exactly what I did. It was easy to just worry about taking care of my brother and my dad and other people, and I didn't even really affect me almost for like a whole 6 months. A whole 6 months of just like not dealing with it, not dealing with it. And when it finally did, I did deal with it. It was huge, right, and overwhelming.
Mhm.
Being able to, reach out ahead of time, I think would have definitely made it, at least like when I finally said, all right, it's time to face this issue, like this issue, this problem, deal with this. It would have made it a little bit easier for sure. Just trying to break it up, but yeah, um,
Yeah, and I
it's
think
devastating.
it's normal to try to still operate and try to get back into the swing of things. And I think it's like the way that most of us have been conditioned and what we've been taught, like, okay, life moves on, move on, but that's not how we're wired. That's just not how we're built. And so, really learning the skill of processing those emotions. It doesn't mean like you have to go and cry your eyes out. It can literally
Right.
mean like, hey, go to the boxing gym, or, go to the ocean or go into nature and, find that stillness and consciously try to release those what we're holding on to. It's easier said than done for sure. I think you're on mute if you're
Yep.
speaking.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep. You got it. Classic move of mine. So let me go on to our next question. Self care, kind of self care practice. When you are looking, when obviously, when your brain is triggered and it's like, okay, I need to take care of myself here, or I need to, maybe you're like me and you're not every day practicing your self care. Um, what is the most effective practices that you find for managing stress, excuse me, and then promoting your mental well-being?
Yeah, so the most effective thing is to build your self-care routine when you're still feeling fine. Now, I'm one of those people that when I'm feeling fine, I kind of throw everything out the door and it's like, okay, well, I feel good. Let me go ahead and just log into work, and live my life. But when I last year I really was so intentional. Like I had this morning routine. I would do cacao ceremony every day. I would, take a walk every day. And I was living my best life. Not to say that I wasn't having low moments, but it was easier to come out of it. Um, the most effective thing that I did last year, I spent about 54 days off of social media and television. I did not watch television. I did not go on social media for about 54 days. That was incredibly boring, but at the same time, it really allowed me to see my actual habits, why I was eating so much, why I was on, my blue screen so much. It was eye-opening. Um, and it also freed up so much time. So I had so much time to experiment. So I did a lot of meditation, I did a lot of breath work. And then found some circles, like I found some women that had this like book club, and it was all around books written by Latinas. And it really allowed me to connect with my culture, and allowed me to connect with women in my community, where we discussed all things practical to the sacred. I didn't even know I needed something like that. But by doing the social detox and the television detox, it opened my space up and my time up so much that I was able to find these things. And so now I have this practice of going to book clubs. I just had a book club last night, which was amazing. And I take breaks and go outside and commune with nature. And my favorite thing that I mentioned earlier is I love doing cacao ceremony. So I connect with cacao because it's something from my heritage. It's something that I grew up with, and it's a plant that actually allows you to open up your heart and really heal from the inside out. And so that to me is the most effective. I would encourage everybody to start small, right? You don't have to give up social media altogether, but you can lessen your time. You can say, okay, today I'm only going to do 2 hours of social media versus 10 hours or whatever. Um, you can set an hour aside to figure out, like, okay, if I don't have anything to do right now, what have I always been interested in trying and doing. And so you can take baby steps and start to figure out what are the things that brings you joy so that you can start to incorporate that into your everyday.
I think like bringing up the cacao ceremony. I love that you have the like a lot of people have like their morning coffee, or they'll have their morning routine. Having like almost like a centering ceremony where you pause, you deliberately take actions to prepare something for yourself, and then you take it into yourself. It's almost like you're energizing like an elixir, and then bring it into yourself. And while you're doing the same thing every day, it kind of, for me, it helps unlock my subconscious to help work on problems sometimes and
It
provide solutions.
Yes, and it's so true. So there's a book by Emoto. I'll have to look it up and post it later, but he talks about the experiments that he did with water. And so he took a few glasses of water, and in one glass of water he would say things like, I love you, you are beautiful, all these positive affirmations. And then he took that glass and he froze it, and then in another glass of water, he said all of these incredibly heinous things like, you're ugly, you're not worth it, you don't deserve anything. So and he did all these ugly kind of affirmations, and he froze it. And when you examine the water that came out of the experiment, the ones where he did positive affirmations, it had like beautiful snowflakes and all these beautiful, you know, sacred geometry in it. It was so gorgeous that you guys can literally Google this. And in the one where he actually said all of these nasty things, it was all shard. It was all broken up and really, it just didn't look good. And so, water actually retains information. So, if you do have your daily tea or your daily coffee or whatever the case may be, you can actually speak words of affirmation into your water or your coffee or your tea, and have that be like the vehicle that heals you and that brings a great day upon you. It's actually scientifically proven, and people have done this experiment over and over again to kind of, because that's what you do in like the science community. When somebody does an experiment and they yield results, people try to replicate it and see if they get the same results, and that experiment has been done over and over again. It's such a great way to start your day and to really shift things within yourself.
This makes me think about, you know, how I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've definitely experienced this. I personally do not like taking the time to make a sandwich for myself, because I don't think it's not that great. It's not really worth my time. However, if my wife or someone else makes a sandwich for me, it tastes better, and it's almost like because there's love added to it. Like you're talking about adding love to
Yeah.
this and that. Yeah, and then you mentioned earlier also like taking a break to go outside. I can't tell you how many times I get up. We're all remote. I get up and something comes up, and I'm like, I need to take a moment. I need to take a a step before I reply to something. I go outside and just walk around the backyard for a second. They say, everybody says, touch grass. It really does help. And then the last thing I wanted to comment. Cutting all social media. Having a detox period for social media is so helpful.
Hmm.
It's something I didn't do for all of last year until I took a break at the end of October. And on that break in the end of October, I muted a couple accounts. I turned off Twitter. I disconnected everything, and then it almost made it seem like, because I wasn't constantly looking at a phone and maybe spending time on quote unquote time wasters, it seemed like the time off I had, the holiday, was way longer as well, and it was just much more recharging to me. So being able to connect like that, those are like maybe the things I wanted to really point out about your last message.
I love that because I know every time you ask for time off, I'm always like, okay, no Slack. Don't make me kick you off Slack. Like, and so I'm so glad you were able to take that time to recharge it. And it's so true when you're not constantly looking at your phone or, behind a blue screen, like you tend to stretch time. Um,
Yeah.
like time seems to go slower, and I kind of like that. I found the book, by the way. It's called The Hidden Messages in Water by Masaru Emoto. It's such a great book, and there's actually a lot of YouTubes out there and a lot of great info on those experiments that he did. And then you also mentioned touching grass. So there's actual scientific uh, data out there regarding that. So a lot of us spend a long, long time not touching Mother Earth because we all wear shoes, right? And the shoes have rubber underneath. And so it's not the same thing. So you actually have to take off your shoes and put your feet on the grass or touch it with your hands. And what happens is we tend to match Mother Earth's resonance, and it automatically resets our nervous system. So the more you do that, the more you're able to regulate yourself. That is the key to um, being able to get rid of anxiety and stress. It's to regulate our systems. And so there's so many ways to regulate our nervous system, and one of the best ways in simple ways is to just go outside and take off our shoes. You can wear socks if you want, just make sure there's no rubber underneath, and connect with Mother Earth.
And then I saw a couple people trail into the space as well. So if you've got questions or comments you want to share, excuse me, if you're able to hear me, I know Twitter's kind of rugging. Don't hesitate, raise your hand up and come up on stage, ask questions and share. It's more of an open space today. We don't have to wait till the end for the AMA. I just wanted to throw that out there. I see a couple new people in the space. Okay, Jassy. This next one is about like how can we support others in our community? You know, if you see someone that's having a challenge, or maybe they tweet every day, and then the last couple of days they just don't tweet. Maybe I'm trying to give an idea here how I would see it. How do you approach community members or friends who you think might be having some difficulty, or might be going through stress, or might be going through something? How do you like reach out to approach that? Because I think some people almost, kind of like we mentioned at the beginning, are closed off, or they shut down, or they ignore it to deal with it and deal with other stuff in the meanwhile. How do you broach that subject?
Yeah, so when I notice things like that, I am a little bit confrontational. It's just the way that I've been trained through helplines and through my training in psychology, and I ask the hard questions like, how are you doing? Are you okay? I've noticed this. Um, you know, for me, I know, just me being me in the world, I know that I'm meant to be a sounding board, because I've been like at the supermarket, for example, and strangers will come up to me and just start telling me their life story. And that has happened my entire life since I was a teen, all the way to like just last week when I was out and about. Somebody saw me out in the streets, and, they started telling me what was happening in their lives. And that's just who I am. I think that that's what I've come here to do on earth, is to just be a sounding board. And so the best thing that I have found to be the most effective is that when somebody is telling you about their concerns, their worries, even like in our community, people talk to me about all sorts of stuff, like things that they're concerned about, and it can turn very negative. I try my best to actively listen. I don't listen to respond. I don't listen to tell my story. I'm literally just there holding space, offering understanding, offering validation for how they feel. I don't try to fix their problem. I don't blame anyone. I don't try to defend. Sometimes I do need to talk about, like, okay, well, this is our thought, or this is what we're doing, or, give a little bit more information. But I do try to hold that space. And I'm just there. It truly is, in my opinion, the kindest thing that any human being can do is to intently listen. And so that's the best thing that I can say. Ask questions. If you see something, say something. And I also tend to want to say, understand your own boundaries. Like, if this isn't something, like, if you can't hold space and you are not in the space to be able to be there for somebody, it's okay not to put yourself in that position. Always prioritize your own mental health and your own well-being, and use your discernment, right?
Yeah. You mentioned prioritize yourself first, your own mental well-being. I got a couple of notes, so I got a lot to say about this one.
Yeah.
Prioritizing yourself first, it reminds me immediately of, like, hey, if something happens on an airplane, you take care of yourself first before you fix like your kids' mask, right? That's what they tell us. Like, you need to be able to interact. You need to be healthy and able to move around and act if you're going to start helping others. Or another way I see when people are critical of others, it's like, hey, clean up your own room before you start criticizing other people's rooms, right? That was something I had to do, like, in my own family. Like, I had to clean up my own act before I started opening my mouth about other stuff. And you said just to listen and actively listen. I think it's so hard sometimes to just actively listen to someone who's going through something, especially if it maybe is critical or maybe reflects poorly on ourselves or something we identify with or hold dear. It's so easy to quickly want to jump and argue and defend and just listen is so, I think, so helpful and useful. A lot of people just need to be heard. Oftentimes, if someone's like upset with something, I'm able to get a chance to talk to them one on one. I I spend so much time trying to think of a reply that I end up just letting a little bit more time go. And it kicks in my subconscious and it calms me down and doesn't make me approach a situation as defensively or as accusatory, maybe when I'm dealing with when I'm working with folks in the community or even at myself at home.
Yeah. I think, I even sometimes get into these things where like somebody says something, I'm like, that's so wrong. Like I have to say my piece, but I take a
Right.
breather and I go for a walk and I'm like, you know what? It's not worth it. Like everybody is entitled to their own opinion, everybody's entitled to their own perspective. And I have decided that it's not my job to correct anybody.
Absolutely. And you mentioned setting boundaries. Like, so in an online space, it kind of rolls into my next topic. Like, what advice do you have for setting boundaries in digital communities without feeling like you're disconnected from the community?
Yeah, boundaries is one of those things, like, what does that even mean, right? And I actually teach a boundaries class on my free time, and what I have learned about boundaries is that it's all about us. It's all about who you are. I think you have to know yourself so well and know who you are. And what I mean by this is not letting ourselves get so easily triggered because we are so insecure in who we are that we can then start setting, sorry, because we are so secure in who we are, we can then start setting those limits. Um, you know, when I talk about knowing ourselves so well, it's about not being easily swayed, not going with, like, the crowd, standing on our own, seeing what our inner being is saying and what we believe to be true. So then we can then start to say, "Aha, this is who I am, this is what I believe." And then we can clearly define what we're comfortable with and establish those boundaries around our time, our personal information, our engagement level. um, Also, there is a piece about communicating openly. So clearly communicating our boundaries. Um, and that can mean actually telling somebody what's not okay and or blocking them, or because we have these choices that we can make, and especially around like digital communities, we can use our privacy settings, we can take advantage of that. um but most importantly, like, what are the boundaries that we're setting within ourselves? One of the things that I teach is like building the trust within ourselves is so important. So if I say I'm going to go to bed at 10, I'm going to go to bed at 10. Because if I break that, then I'm losing trust in myself. And so if you say you're going to take more breaks from social media, don't be afraid to take breaks from the community when needed. It's okay to step back and recharge and return when you feel ready. And then the other important thing is prioritizing real life connections, balancing our online interactions with real life connections. For me, I'm an introvert. And so going to a convention, going to see people, going to a party really brings me a lot of anxiety. But once I'm able to regulate myself and I actually go and do the activity and spend time with people, I feel so good because I was a part of something. I was part of connecting in the physical world. And then lastly, what I'll say is being really selective in our engagement, what we focus on, where we put our energy, and what discussions we put our energy. I mean, I see a lot of discussions in our community, and I I see them and I make a choice. I make a decision on whether I'm going to engage in that or not. And so I do my best to um, curate the types of interactions that I want to have. And that really helps me stay within my body and regulated.
Yeah, I think it's important to, like you said, set um, limits and make sure that you're keeping yourself kind of holding yourself accountable for what you want to see, what kind of change or mental space or you want to foster. You mentioned being introverted and the anxiety of going out into public stuff. I am like 150% like the same. Even like growing up, I would hate my friends. Hey, you want to go out? Hey, you want to go do this? Hey, you want to do this? It was always no, no, no. And but because I didn't want to do it, but when they would drag me out of the house, I always had so much fun because it was just almost getting over that initial like, no, I want to be by myself kind of thing. But being able to interact with the physical, real world relationships, like you mentioned, is very recharging, and it's important to foster a balance, like you mentioned. I think too.
Yeah, totally. It's so funny because I think only there's everybody on our team, but one person, I think everybody could probably guess who that one person is we're all introverted. There's one person that's not introverted.
Yeah. All right, so kind of talking about we were just talking about boundaries, and sometimes maybe you need help, and maybe you don't know who to reach out to, or you don't have the tools or support in place to just reach out to someone you know or in your personal circle. Like so, when it comes to seeking professional help, like what are some signs that either someone you see might need support and guide them in the right direction, and how do you maybe identify that maybe you might need a little bit more of a professional clinical assistance?
Yeah, so this is really all around being mindful and really taking stock into what is happening within ourselves, right? Because, like I said before, we're so used to being on autopilot. And so, practicing the skill of mindfulness will allow you to identify some of these things. And so, in my years of talking people off the ledge, and even in my years of my own personal kind of path on, taking care of my mental health, these are the things that I've noticed. So, the first thing is mood changes. If your mood is frequent and intense, or you have like prolonged feelings of sadness, hopelessness, despair, if you're really um depressed for several days or weeks, that's a really good sign that okay, I need to start looking for some sort of support, right? um if you're
Yeah,
avoiding social activities and isolating yourself, and if that's not your normal state of being, right? Like if your normal state of being is like you're a homebody, then there might be other signs. But if your normal state of being is being out and about and being with your friends and you know having all these hobbies, and you're losing interest in your hobbies or activities that you once enjoyed, that's another sign that we need to start looking for professional help. Changes in sleep patterns. Now, if you're somebody that likes to stay up all night, but all of a sudden you're going to bed earlier and you don't know what's happening, or on the other side of the spectrum where you go to bed early, but all of a sudden you have insomnia, looking at your drastic changes in sleep routine, that could be another sign that something's off. There's something has changed, and seeking some sort of professional help might help. Appetite and weight changes. So your eating habits are extremely noticeable where you are either gaining a lot of weight or losing a lot of weight, depending on who you are and how your chemistry is. That can be another sign. Difficulty concentrating. So if you're having a lot of foggy ness in your brain, or on your mind, if you can't focus, if your memory is kind of like wishy-washy, if you're unable to make a decision, like that just happened to me recently, and I'm just like, what is happening? Right. And I had to go back to some of my self-care kind of stuff, and it actually cleared it up. Substance abuse. If you increase reliance on alcohol, drugs, or any other substance, that's another sign, right? Because we're trying to kind of mask something, we're trying to deal with something, and so that could be another sign of needing to seek professional help. Um, looking at your language, at how you're talking about yourself to others, how you're talking about yourself in your mind, feeling things like hopelessness, worthlessness, thoughts of self harm. That is a huge sign. There was a moment in time where was like having these thoughts where it's like, whoa, that's so not me. And so I actually started looking for a therapist at that point, and it did help. Talk therapy does help. um, if you are neglecting your personal hygiene, now some of us, that's just the way we are, but if you're somebody that is has a certain routine, but you're no longer taking care of yourself through that routine, that's another sign that you may need to talk to somebody about it. Unexplained irritability, difficulty managing emotions. And so let me talk about how to kind of guide somebody or how to look for help. So, expressing concern is the first thing. So, approaching the person, like I said before, I use the word confrontational, but you can approach them with empathy and express your concern for their well being. I mentioned earlier actively listening, providing a non judgmental and supportive space for people, or for your friends or family members, and then suggesting professional help. So if this is you needing this, like looking for professional help, a therapist, a counselor, a mental health professional, looking, the key is like looking to kind of learn more about yourself and why this might be happening is really important. um Yeah, those are the main highlights. It's not all encompassing, but those are some places that you can start.
Yeah, it seemed like all the things that you kind of mentioned all point towards, at least to me, um, kind of a axiom of like know thyself. If you know that you act a certain way and suddenly it's different, can you objectively like look at yourself and like, hey, I hate going outside, but I'm going out all the time, or I love going or spending time with my buddies or playing games after work, but it's just not interesting anymore. Things that you love to do that suddenly stop having maybe a meaning, or they're just not giving you that delight, or like you said, it's a change. I think knowing yourself, at least when you're looking at yourself or when you might need help, is definitely a big boon if you're going to if to be able to gauge whether or not you need outside help as well. And expressing concern first, however you do it, um, is you all. I mean, that's definitely absolute step one. So many people will like it, and it doesn't. Maybe you're not even have. Maybe you're just having a bad day. And if someone reaches out and says, "Hey, how are you? Are you having an okay day? It seems like you're kind of down." Just the simple, hey, reaching out and asking, "Hey, how are you?" And taking a pause to listen. It's like that in itself can really do so much. I think for people who are hurting.
Absolutely. I think that a lot of us have become such a good expert at ignoring what we feel. Like, I spent 20 plus years ignoring myself and ignoring how I was feeling because I was all about pushing through, checking off my to do list, doing the things that everybody expected me to do, that I actually developed fibromyalgia. And I've had fibromyalgia for over 20 years, and I had this like buzzing pain from head to toe. No one would know it because I always had a smile on. I looked normal, but I was in dire pain all the time. And it wasn't until I started to practice mindfulness, it wasn't until I had a mental breakdown back in 2015. It was so bad. I was throwing up. It's such a bad mental breakdown. And somebody had told me about Reiki, and I was like, oh, that's too woo woo for me. I don't know about that. Because I was already in therapy, and I was like, I'm doing all the things. I don't know what else to do. But after that mental breakdown, I was like, you know what? I will try anything at this point. And so I think a lot of us are such experts at like, no, I'm doing great. Like I'm really successful, or I'm really doing all the things that society, you know, tells me to do, but really we kind of have forgotten about ourselves. I know I did for so long, for decades. And it wasn't until I started to come back to myself and really learning myself. In 2021, I cried tears of joy because my pain went away, because I finally started to practice this thing that we're talking about, which is mindfulness, and knowing myself so well that I knew what my boundaries were, and I knew the things, and I tried so many things that I knew exactly what were the things that were going to get me back into a healthy state of mind. It is an active type of role that we have to take within our own mental health, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, you have to take an active role. You have to like take the time to figure these things out. Not everyone's going to immediately know how they what makes them tick. You know, even though you're living inside this body your whole life, we don't take the time to look at it and see, you know, the why and the wheres. It'll take us by surprise. And you mentioned like almost having like a breakdown. Like, yeah, I think sometimes it's for people who run into that and have like that type of a break, they hit the bottom and they have the breakdown. How lucky it is for those of us who go through that and then bounce back and heal from it. Because some people will hit the bottom and just drag sometimes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
so,
and it could feel very hopeless. It could feel like
yes,
nothing's ever going to change. But if you look at our cycles of life, right? Like I mentioned, like even in our own industry or our own community, we see the bear market come, we see the bull market or the bull run come, right? Nothing ever stays the same. And so just like if we're really really happy right now, it's so important to live in the present moment and be here right now and live through that. And then when we're down in rock bottom, reminding ourselves that everything is ever changing. And so finding that support, finding that group, finding the thing that helps us come out of that or helps us through that winter cycle of our lives is extremely important.
absolutely. I know we're about 5 minutes away on time here, so I've got one more question and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Twitter is still being ruggish, so I will we'll wrap it up with this one. Now, the last one, reflecting on your personal growth, how has um, this just prioritizing mental wellness and putting it higher up and something that you look at and actively work towards daily, how does that influence your overall experience in an online space?
Yeah. So you may have all noticed I'm a little bit inconsistent in online spaces, and that's exactly why. I'm someone, as you if you can gather this from everything I just said, that checks in with myself regularly and how my body and spirit is responding to stimulus. And I know that I have a choice. We all have choices, right? And within those choices, I can choose to not participate. So I tend to be a little bit inconsistent in online spaces, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and I've curated my feed in such a way that I'm sure to only see what is good for my own well-being, especially on Instagram because that's where I spend a lot of my time. So we all have choices. So knowing that we have a choice, and it's by invoking our power to make those choices that allows us to shape our own experiences, right? Sometimes we feel like we don't have a choice because these are the people that make up the community and so what and so forth. But honestly, what's for you is going to stick with you. And it's all about prioritizing our mental wellness. Nothing is worth our mental health going degrading. So keeping that in mind and knowing that you have the power and claiming your personal power is can make all the difference.
Well said. This kind of just popped into my head, and I was just curious because this is something that I think about often when it comes to like specifically Twitter and social media, is like the concept of like an echo chamber. So when you're curating your feed, how do you try to find a balance so that you're not only getting, so you don't end up in like an echo chamber or end up in a place with like maybe toxic positivity or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I look at different sides and I look at different creators, and it's like, oh, okay, this person's saying something completely different. I can learn from this person. And so I start to follow them. And then, like, looking at like all of their content, I can then make a decision on whether or not it's for me or not for me, right? I do like to,
Right.
I mean, I'm very studious in that way, where I look at all perspectives, and even if it's something I don't agree, I do try to look at it from a different lens. Or I try to take it as like constructive feedback, like, oh, maybe they have a point. Let me look deeper into this and see if there's something that I can contribute to this. And so you're right. I do sometimes get stuck in an echo chamber, and I start to look at my feed like, oh, all of these things are like all of the same. Let me look at the other side, and let me look at different creators that are, have a different opinion. And so you can make that choice as well, right? Because everything,
Right.
and and this is what I like to say. There are three things that are true in my life, at least: intention, um, balance, and making a decision and having a choice. And so when I look at those three things, I try to come into in the middle of it all, and I try to discern the best I can. And we're human beings. We're all spirits having a human experience. And so we can make mistakes. We could be wrong. But it's all about having an open mind and knowing that we can make a choice.
Well said. Jesse, I want to be respectful of your time, so I think we'll wrap up right now. It's 1 hour. So first, let me huge thank you, Jesse, for joining us. Not just for taking the time to join us, but also sharing your expertise and your own personal experiences and your own personal stuff. Also for being so flexible. I know we had to shuffle the date for this space so many times. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you.
For any of those who are interested, what are the best places for our listeners or those listening to the recording later to follow and learn more about what you're up to?
So Luna Gods is my handle on Twitter. That's the best place. And yeah.
Perfect, Jesse. Thank you so much. It was a treat and a pleasure. I really appreciate it. Let me also now thank everyone, especially those who stuck it out through the constant audio issues. Monk, Mike, Muse, Samist, Puzzle. Thank you all so much for sticking it out with us. Hopefully, Twitter will fix their space issues and their audio issues by the time we have our next space next week. So, thank you all for joining. Remember, when your journey of mental wellness as it's going, and each of you are playing in a vital role at creating a community that thrives not just online, but also one that can foster the well-being of every person in that community. So if you have any further questions or thoughts, please feel free to continue the conversation in our channels, and let's keep the dialogue alive. We can explore more ways to support each other or help each other, pick each other up when we're down. So stay connected, stay supportive, take moments for your own self-care, and until next time, I'll see you then. We'll be back live next Wax Wednesday. I believe we'll be joined by Yo Creating Mike and Franklin from Novo Pangea, where they'll be talking all about the upcoming PvP release, and that should definitely be a high energy space. If you've ever seen Mike on Twitch, he's got loads of energy. So come join us, hang out. Until then, again, thank you, Jassy. Thank you, our listeners here and listening later. Everybody take care of yourselves. Happy Wax Wednesday.
Thank you. Bye.
In the land of whiskey and moonshine, where the wolves are under the pale moonlight. Oh yeah, there's a project brewing on the blockchain, where the wax wolves come alive at night. They roam the digital plains wild and free. Oh, whiskey wolves in the night, rolling through the wax blockchain, shining bright. Oh yeah, oh, whiskey wolves, their spirits they can fly. Raise a glass to the beauty of this digital side. Oh yeah, oh, raise a glass to the wax wolves in the night, in the night.
Centralized back breaking the chain.